been deep diving on this topic for a number of years. It's something that a lot of us realized and unlocked when we went through entry-level training. And it's this in a nutshell. And I'm going to get to the point here, but let me frame it like this. When you go through a program such as recruit training or boot camp, and you don't have the ability to release your sexual energy, something happens to you, in men especially. Your testosterone is allowed to transmute and flow back into your system, into your body. You retain your sexual energy, you retain a sexual tension. This is a topic that a lot of people aren't really comfortable talking about because we live in a culture that is hyper-sexualized. Why? Because of these things. I would argue that the majority of violence in the world is a result of an unrestrained sexual frame. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by your frame? Men have a masculine frame by our very nature. Women have a feminine frame by their very nature. These two things are on polar opposite ends of the spectrum, but they attract to each other. And when that polarity starts to get out of balance, you start to see really strange things manifest. As men have an excessive release of their energy, you tend to see them move more towards a feminine frame. And as women have an excessive release of their energy, they tend to move towards a masculine frame. What's going on in our culture right now? This whole gender neutral business. I mean, there's just so much of this that could probably be pretty easily explained. And it's that most people are unrestrained, or they don't have their energy contained well enough because it's being released all the time. It's really prevalent in males and men in this country. And you'll see it. You know, these guys that just don't, it's that thing that we talk about, that masculine thing that most men should have by the time they reach, go through puberty and reach adulthood, be it young adult, middle age, or older. And the reason I bring this up is because I believe this is the root of a lot of the problems in this world. Many a nation has fallen due to a man's ability to not be able to restrain himself. Politicians, certainly. Epstein Island. I mean, all of it. We can draw on a lot of examples. I'm going to plant this seed early. We're going to talk about this quite a bit, probably going forward on this channel. This is something I've been thinking about for a very long time, and have been trying to really find a way to address this issue and make it make sense to you, so you can digest this information and think, yeah, you know what, maybe there is something to this. I've been on a lot of channels that talk about a lot of this stuff. Maybe I'll put some links down below for you guys. Let's do the close fight. Iran, still the close fight, still a conflict in that region. A lot of saber rattling, a lot of threats, and a lot of, basically it's a one-sided fight in our favor. I think the United States understands that. I think most people understand that. But I think we're going to be in this thing for a bit. Near fight. Unconstrained liability. Just what we've been talking about here at the top of the video. I think a person's inability to constrain their energy, it creates a lot of problems in their lives. It knocks that polarity out of balance, and it makes people seek things that are probably not within their true nature. Nature gets out of balance. If you do a parallel to the animal kingdom has a very short mating period season. And in the rest of the time, animals just go about their business, collecting their resources, feeding, and looking for mates and all this type of thing. But they're not out there just constantly releasing. So if you want to draw that parallel connection, you can, and this maybe helps you understand that there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. So that's a near-fight issue, and we're going to talk about these things simply because it's just not discussed enough. And all you have to do is just look at any aspect in society, and you can see it manifested just plain as day. Again, this idea of this gender fluidity, it's an absolute fallacy. There's nothing true about it other than it's a mismanagement of our internal energy in our internal framework that we are born with, that's inherent to us as men and women. Okay, all right. I'm not going to get too wrapped around the axle right now, but I wanted to set the foundation for this. Deep fight, the social healing, that's going to be a deep fight issue. We're going to have some healing that's going to need to take place in this country. All right, so the majority of violence stems from unconstrained sexual energy. I truly believe this because, again, you know, when I go back to those many years ago when a lot of us went through recruit training, you know, a lot of it's the training, right? You know, it's the conditioning to do what the military wants you to do. And so you start, you know, exhibiting some of these behaviors that they kind of program into you more or less. But there's also a physical and mental energy after the 3 months of being there that you can't really describe, but you feel it. And people are attracted to it. The way that men are attracted to women with strong feminine energy, women are attracted to men with a strong masculine energy. That's the way the world works. That's the way we were designed. But somewhere along the way, there's been something that's been infused into our society, which is it's diluted it. Again, this thing right here. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. So the majority of violence in the world, I believe, stems from unconstrained sexual energy. I mean, it's a theory that's been postulated in a lot of schools of thought. So if you want to deep dive on your own, feel free to do so. Just be aware, you'll go down a lot of rabbit holes and you'll find some information that you might find valuable, possibly. I don't know, we'll see. Impulse and polarity shift, the emasculation of men and the masculinization of women. These polarity shifts and gender roles become blurred. You know, gender fluidity, again, it's just, these are things that people make up to try to give themselves meaning in their lives, when really all they have to do is just look internally and look at their own habits and say, what is it that I'm doing that's causing me to be this way, to feel confused about my gender? They would rather externalize it, and they'd rather society make an excuse for them and give them a category that they can live in, when in fact it's really just something as simple as just keeping it in. Easier said than done, probably in many cases, because a lot of these habits can really spin out of control and take on a life of their own and control the decision making in a lot of people's lives. Again, this isn't a topic for the faint of heart, so stick with me and we'll do more of this. Manifests in uncontrolled behaviors. I can tell you probably with a high degree of certainty that the majority of the domestic violence you see here in the United States, if you look at a lot of the people that are committing that violence, they're somewhere in that grouping of people that we're talking about that aren't entirely stable in terms of their own self-identity. That's just a fact. You've seen it, you know it, but no, it's kind of the elephant in the room really at this point. But I think there's going to be a corner turned on this topic, and I think this is going to start to be talked about a lot more. At least I'm going to talk about it, plant the seed. I'm no expert on it, nobody is, but we can certainly have a discussion about it. And the masculine and feminine energies, they are meant to attract to each other. That's the way the world works. That's why you and I are here, because of our ancestors and people before us that were attracted to each other and gave, birth to us, and on and on and on. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to unpack. We're going to talk about abortion, infanticide, and we're going to cover it all, and why those things are so prevalent, why people are so attracted to these ideals. And it all stems from this very thing that I'm talking about. I think you know that, and I think you and I understand this. Okay, so the digital world becomes a clearinghouse for temptation and delusion. People become deluded into their identities, especially their sexual identities, and a lot of it has to do with the temptation and these habits that get formed in many cases pretty early in a lot of people's lives. Again, I've done a lot of anecdotal research on this, and I mean, it's pretty frightening, honestly. These things are a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that we have access to a lot of information, but the curse is that we also have access to a lot of temptation. We'll talk more.